Welcome to Parliament for this event on Brexit and breast cancer. I'm really pleased to be hosting you here today. I represent Dulwich and West Norwood, which is a constituency in South London, and in my constituency we voted more than 77% to remain in the EU. I have lived in Europe for a brief time in the past. I've been a passionate pro-European for as long as I can remember. So that's where I sit within this debate, and my commitment to my constituents and indeed to the 48% of people who voted not to leave the European Union is to ensure that within all of the debates around our departure from the EU, those voices are not lost but continue to be heard and continue to be heard on every aspect of the debate. I believe in the European Union for the values it represents of tolerance, diversity and international collaboration, and the statement that across national borders, within a wide geographical community, we have more in common than the things that divide us, and we do better when we work together in collaboration with each other. And I think the evidence of the significant benefits that the EU has delivered is absolutely clear in terms of peace and security, but also importantly for the issues that we're discussing today in terms of rights and protections. It's of huge regret to me, and I think to many others, that during the EU referendum campaign there was so little detailed information discussed and debated as part of the sort of broad national discussion that we had around leaving the EU, and so little discussion about some of the very practical implications of leaving the EU for people's lives. Strong environmental regulation is vital for all of us, and what's vital about the EU environmental regulations, amongst many other things, is that they underpin trade. So they stop people from engaging in environmentally harmful activities in order to undercut or to make higher profits. And without them, we see, and I think we only need to look to the US and other parts of the world as an example, a race to the bottom on harmful environmental practices in a kind of ever-growing desire to undercut and to make more money. So the EU's REACH legislation, which governs chemicals, is absolutely vital. REACH stands for Registration, Evaluation, Authorisation and Restriction of Chemicals. Its main aim is to protect humans, wildlife and the environment from the threat of industrial chemicals whilst not undermining the competitiveness of the chemicals industry. REACH came into force in 2007, and it's been hugely effective in levelling the playing field on old and new chemicals, placing the burden of proof on the chemicals industry to demonstrate that chemicals are safe for use in any particular context, and in ensuring that there's a transparent and accountable framework within which the chemicals industry is regulated. The government claims, and you'll see on the screen today that we're discussing Brexit at every opportunity. The government claims that the EU withdrawal bill, which is currently very slowly making its way through Parliament, transfers all EU regulation into law, and they would have us believe that there is therefore no cause for concern post-Brexit around environmental protection. But I'm gravely concerned about the content of the EU withdrawal bill. It's structured to allow the government to vary laws which derive from the EU at will once we've left the European Union through statutory instruments which require an absolutely minimal level of parliamentary scrutiny. So there is, while it transfers EU regulation into UK law at a kind of baseline position in time, there is absolutely no comfort that any of us can derive as to what happens going forward. The EU withdrawal bill has no mechanism for keeping pace with future changes in regulation and keeping UK law up to date once we have left the EU. And REACH in particular is not a static set of regulations. It's a statutory framework which supports a regulatory process. And so there's an enormous burden of work that comes with that, and I think it's accepted opinion that the UK on its own cannot either afford or manage the responsibility of that dynamic framework going forward as a single country acting on its own. My colleague Mary Cray has tabled an amendment to the EU withdrawal bill calling on the government to ensure the UK's continued participation in REACH once we leave the EU, and I think there's a critical moment just now. So the government's delayed the EU withdrawal bill coming back to Parliament. I think that's because they're worried that they haven't got the support of their own backbench MPs for it. But the business of amendments to the bill and what amendments can gather cross-party support and therefore change the law is a very, very live debate right now. So I'd encourage all of you to be writing to your MP, to be encouraging others who you know who are concerned about this issue to be writing to their MPs, to be asking them to sign that amendment and to vote for it when it gets debated in Parliament. Finally, Brexit has wider implications for every aspect of healthcare and every aspect of our NHS, including breast cancer care. Our NHS is reliant on EU nationals for a large part of its workforce, and you'll have seen, I'm sure, the shocking figure that after the referendum, the number of EU nationals applying for nursing positions in the UK dropped by 95%. It's completely atrophied since the referendum, and almost all medical research takes place in international collaboration, much of it with the benefit of EU research grants, and then the information and the benefits that come from that research are then shared across boundaries. So this event is very timely. It's absolutely vital that as Parliament debates the terms of the UK's withdrawal from the EU and as the government is negotiating with the EU countries, the detailed concerns of UK citizens about every aspect of withdrawal are debated, discussed and campaigned on. The government is running scared of scrutiny at the moment. So we have the urgent question this morning is about the news yesterday that the government has got no commitment to a meaningful vote in Parliament necessarily before we even leave the European Union. They are running scared of parliamentary and public scrutiny at every turn, and there is only one possible response to that, to my mind, which is to scrutinise and to campaign even more vociferously and in even more of an organised way. So I wish you every success with the event today, and I'm sorry that I can't be with you for the whole of it. But I'd encourage you as part of the event to try to agree some really clear lobbying and campaigning actions for the very short term, because there is a window of opportunity just now around the EU withdrawal bill and its content when not everything is fixed in stone and this Brexit process is not yet done and the terms of it are not yet established. So campaigning activity and making sure that this issue is firmly on the table is of absolutely paramount importance. And do keep in touch with me after the event. Do let me know what you agreed as a set of outcomes, and I'll do my best to get the word out with colleagues here and to see what we can do to make a difference on this agenda. Thank you very much. Sorry that I'm going to skip. That's okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Helen, and we will be coming back. It's great to have you pushing us to do that. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Helen, can you come and join us here? So, just again to welcome you all. We're coming to the end of, as we know, October Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but as lots of us like to call it Breast Cancer Prevention Month. I'm Deborah Burton. My organisation is Tipping Point North South, and we work in film, events, and single-issue campaigning. And From Pink to Prevention is one of our 3 campaigns. We work incredibly closely. We partner with Helen Lynn at the Alliance for Cancer Prevention. We were also supposed to have here today the chair of the National Alliance for Women's Organisations, Helen Hayes, who had a terrible fall yesterday and is unable to make it today. So this is happening in her absence, but I might be able to pick up on some notes that she was going to present later on. It's important to say, as Helen Hayes outlined there, that this today is happening in the wider context of what is an overwhelming body of scientific evidence that links harmful everyday chemicals to cancer in general and to breast cancer in particular. And this year, the press picked up on a lot of stories, including studies about, for example, paper till receipts coated with endocrine disrupting chemicals, household dust carrying hazardous chemicals such as flame retardants from furniture and phthalates from plastic. Some studies show that indoor air can be more polluted than outdoor air. Also this year we learned that 83% of water samples taken from around the world are contaminated by plastic particles. 3/4 of all honey is contaminated with pesticides. Nick Mole, who's from Pan, later will talk about his organisation's report that's just come out this month that shows that fruit and vegetables given to 4 to 6-year-olds through government schemes are contaminated with up to 123 pesticide chemical residues have been found on fruit and vegetables. So there's so much more evidence beside this going back decades, but just to sum all of this up in terms of the context, this is from the Lancet, a Lancet report in May this year. Cancer is a product of both nature and nurture, in which environmental risk is an equally crucial and often neglected factor. So this is just to give some background on why we are here today talking about chemicals, breast cancer, and critically, regulation and Brexit. So I'm going to come to our speakers. Nick Mole is the Policy Officer at Pesticides Action Network UK. Pan UK is the only organisation that works on every aspect of the global pesticides issue, including threats to environment and human health from their use. He works on UK and EU issues that include trying to stop the use of toxic pesticides, encouraging London's parks and green spaces to go pesticide-free, and advising the public on health issues related to pesticide exposure. Lynn from Pink to Prevention has worked on issues linking women, health and environment since 1995, initially at the Women's Environmental Network, where she was the health coordinator and co-director, and then she worked for them as a freelance consultant. She's worked internationally and at the EU level with Women in Europe for a Common Future, and is on their international advisory body. She was one of the founders of the No More Breast Cancer campaign, and currently facilitates the Alliance for Cancer Prevention, which works with occupational and environmental health specialists and activists to challenge the existing emphasis on the control and treatment of cancer as the only way forward, and to get equal recognition for primary prevention, which means stopping the disease before it starts, particularly in relation to environmental and occupational risk factors. Hilda Palmer. Hilda is the coordinator of the Greater Manchester Hazards Centre. She's the chair of the Hazards campaign and the facilitator of Families Against Corporate Killing. Hilda organises the annual Hazards Conference, which is the UK's biggest educational and organising event for trade unions, safety reps and activists. She works and campaigns tirelessly, she absolutely does, against injustice and for equality, better health and safety at work, in the environment and the community more widely. So I think we were to go to Zara. Zara would normally be kicking off. Am I pulling out some key points from Zara's?
Well, if Nick goes first, then you can.
So yeah, well, I have a look at this. So Nick, maybe we can start with you while I do some homework.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was quite good. That good.